Welcome to this social forum from the Accounting Alchemy Network, where today we are going to be diving into pillar talk, talking about the five pillars of regenerative accounting and what that means. So if you're catching the replay on YouTube and this is the first time you've stumbled into an Accounting Alchemy video, this is actually a good one to start with because we're going to be getting into some of the fundamentals of what it means to be a regenerative accountant and what sorts of things we're looking at and tracking beyond just the money and finance side of things. And I'm here today with Cassie Bays, who is one of our fantastic organizing members of the regenerative accounting movement. And yeah, Cassie, you lead calls on our Regenerative Accounting Cafe and the monthly discussion around funding common resources. Do you want to talk about those things at all before we dive into the five pillars of regenerative accounting?
Sure. So I guess we'll start with the Regenerative Accounting Cafe. This is a collaboration between the AAN, the Accounting Alchemy Network, and the Next Economy MBA. And so this is a fun discussion of it's kind of an open portal of whatever we want it to be. Next Economy MBA folks are usually people that are doing really beautiful things in the world, and they might come with like really specific questions, like tax or accounting technical questions. And so then we've got other accountants in the room that can maybe help address them. And then sometimes it's just a bunch of accountants in the room, and we might have some far out discussions about, what do these next economies feel like? How would accounting support an economy that supports all life? And it's a fun discussion every week. It's one of my favorite, or every month. It's one of my favorite calls of the month. And then we've got funding common resources, and this has been an amazing call that has evolved over time. It started with like detailed tax reform. And now we're looking at like, what does the consciousness of the next economy feel like? And how can we identify that when it shows up in our lives? Um, because sometimes the frequency is there, but we don't know what it looks like. So how do we find the frequency? So these are more things that we're exploring. It's fun. And Ingrid usually shows up and other people show up, and we'd love to have you all there too. So that's
Yay.
my little rant about the two things that I'm really passionate about that we do every month.
Rant. I love that, Cass. Thank you so much for leading those two calls. They are definitely one of the most consistent opportunities to engage and just have these amazing discussions. They're really, really amazing. And we generally don't record those discussions. So it's kind of a be there or you're gonna miss it. So if you're catching this, check out our newsletter, check out our high-low group, and join us for one of those upcoming calls that Cass leads every month. Today, we are diving into each of the five pillars of regenerative accounting and talking about how they interrelate and actions that we can be taking to be the change that we want to see in the world with these fundamentals in mind. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in case this is the first time you've heard of the five pillars of regenerative accounting, so we can just look at them together. So, this is just loading for a moment, taking a look at the Accounting Alchemy Network website. On our About page, we've got the five pillars of regenerative accounting. The first of which is around humane governance. And we've got a few bullet points under each of these. I'm not going to necessarily read through the bullet points. You can pause the replay if you want to and read them on your own or go to our website anytime. But the idea of how are we governing ourselves? And that's not just governance from the bigger picture political worldview standpoint. It's also governance within our communities, within our organizations. What does it look like to have agreements and accountability and to hold people accountable to those agreements? And that is the same within our businesses as it is within our world. How do we make decisions together? How do our communities operate? That is governance. And there are many different kinds of structures that we can set up for governance. So, looking at governance and how it interrelates with our lives, with our organizations, is an important element. And also, how are we tracking the governance and what is working and what's not? And if a governance aspect of our organizations isn't working, how do we know? How do we account for that? And then getting into the economic and money story, this is what we're used to keeping track of as accounting professionals, tracking P&L, balance sheet, just the ins and outs of flow and money. And at the same time, there might be some ins and outs that we're not tracking as much. And that has to do with our bigger picture economy and how the economics of our world flow. So, taking into account some of the bigger picture elements, are we keeping track of the what we currently call externalities that we're not tracking on the profit and loss and balance sheet? Where do the things that we use to make money come from? And who are we selling to? What our relationships are with our vendors, our customers, our teammates, and how all of those flow together in the money story and with our bigger economic framework in our world. There's a lot more about this that needs to be looked at than just what goes on the P&L and the balance sheet. And then that brings us into wealth, and we spell wealth Wellth. That actually comes from Carrie Taylor's fantastic book, One Living System. And she defines wealth as the sum of your wellness and well-being, which is our greatest asset. And so looking at that bigger picture wealth, how often are we sacrificing our wealth, our well being, and even our beliefs and our values on the altar of profit for profit's sake, leading it back into that economic and money story? So, what can we do to make sure that we're putting our ultimate well being and the well being of our teams, our families, and all peoples and our planet, that we're focusing on those interrelations and keeping that wealth as a top priority? And that also brings us into JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. How a lot of these ideas that we are discussing today flow within the systemic relationships with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our world, and that it's all interrelated. And if we're going to create systems that support our well being and our prosperity so that we can thrive, we need to create systems so that everyone can thrive. And that includes bringing in truth and reconciliation around injustices of the past and making sure that there are truly equitable opportunities for everyone. And there's a lot of education and healing that needs to be done around these particular topics. And then how that flows into planet and climate, recognizing that we are very dependent on this beautiful planet that we live with and on, and we are receiving all of the things that we need for sustainable life. And at the same time, if we continue to extract from this planet and extract for profit's sake, and have systems that are inequitable, that we're going to end up making it so that huge areas of our planet are no longer livable, that populations on our planet don't have what they need to survive. There's a lot of things that we need to be doing to create more equitable systems. So, with all of this in mind, um, as you can see, these 5 pillars are really interrelated and flow in together. And so the idea today is to just have a little bit of a discussion about how they interrelate and what we can be doing to take the action that we want to take to be the change that we want to see in the world with these fundamentals in mind. So with that, Cass, I would love to toss it to you for a moment and just like opening up the discussion of what comes up for you as you reflect on the 5 pillars and, each of them or all of them together. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, and I think first, I just want to say, Ingrid, that, from my understanding, these 5 pillars were, for one, they're articulated beautifully. And I think they do a good job of encompassing, this this new world that we're trying to create. And but I also want to honor that, like, you channeled these through and brought these into the world. And I just want to say that they're amazing and thank you for doing that. And I wanted to give due credit, you know,
Thank
where it's
you.
due.
I feel like channeled is kind of an appropriate term in this because I don't feel like these are mine. I don't feel like I created them. This was a download. I have no idea where it came from. Like something all of a sudden just crashed into my head, and I was like, "Oh, I need to write this down now." So, yeah,
Yeah.
whoever it came from, thank you. I feel like there's something coming through here, and it's just trying to show up and figure out how do we live this.
Yeah. Well, I think that this articulates beautifully what we're all feeling. And I think especially in the accounting world, sometimes, at least for me, in certain times of my accounting career, I felt like I had to kind of have like a almost had like a split personality, where I'd go into my accounting into the office every day and I had to abide by these certain things. And then I had all these other values and they felt like way over there. Um, and what I love about these pillars is this encourages us to like, we need to bring all of this together. And this is important. And I think for me, I think one of the what I feel is the best medicine for healing where we've been is reconnecting, and I guess reanimating some of these things where we've been disconnected. And I think bringing our values into the the accounting work and not just being like, oh, these are numbers, but being able to feel deeper into those numbers and ask if those are still aligned with our values. And I think that these pillars kind of walk us down into some different channels, and some different avenues that are related to, our deeper values that we have as humans. That sometimes we feel like we don't maybe get to be aligned with because we're focused on the numbers or trying to make ends meet and we're in survival mode. Um, and I think for me, I would say when I look at these, for me, the second pillar and the third pillar, those have probably been the loudest for me and the biggest ones that I have kind of dug into the most.
With the
Um,
politics and the wealth.
the the economic and money story and the true wealth.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say true wealth. And for me, that's,
Yeah.
um, I've, for me personally, that's been one that I've, walked on. And I still, when I have moments, um, of like walking out my back door and being able to see the Milky Way, I'm like, ooh, this is true wealth. And I sit there and I like hold on to that and I kind of, marinate in that feeling for a minute and be like, this is what it feels like. That's what true wealth feels like. And they're little moments, it's sometimes they're not anything like extravagant. Sometimes it's really simple. But to me, that is really, really powerful in helping us have I guess, some sort of a beacon of like, where are we heading?
Yeah.
What do we want? It's not about the money. It's not about the dollar in the bank account. It's about these moments of true wealth.
Yeah. Well, and I love, I feel like you're pointing to a really important dichotomy that is present in our current world where so often, people strive and strive to reach this point of financial security. And it's this, someday when I get to this point right here, then I'm going to be able to be happy. I'm going to feel fulfilled. I'm going to feel safer. And then very often when people get there, they're like, wait a second, I'm there, I made it. Why didn't anything change? What's where's the fanfare? Where's the thing that I thought I was going to have when I got to this point of, security? And recognizing that true security is not financial. True security is relationships. Even when we have wealth, there's always the fear of losing it somehow. There could be a market crash or some you know, external situation that comes up, you know, major plumbing incident or a house fire or something, and there's insurance and all these other things, and just people living in this constant anxiety of needing to maintain this security when it's not true security. There's always this underlying fear that it could just be stripped away at any point. Whereas when there's a real disaster, like here in Southern Oregon, well, the Almeda fire came through in September of 2020 and over 2,400 homes burned. And we had so many people unhomed by that disaster, and the community really came together and just everything that could be done to make sure that people had food, had clean water, that were, you know, trying to make sure that people were indoors because the air outside was not breathable. Like it was a major, major catastrophe, and the community really came together, and we got to see where the problems were in our systems of the community coming together and how we can fix those in the future moving forward. But just trying to figure out, like, how do we do this and how do we do it together? How do we make it so that our security is not based upon finance? In Charles Eisenstein's book, Sacred Economics, fantastic book, highly recommend. He says something along the lines of um, the purpose of life is not to just survive in maximum security and comfort. The true purpose of life is to create that which is beautiful to us. And I like to add and share it with others. So when we take those ideas into mind with our economic and money story and also our wealth, feeling into how much we have and what do we truly have? Do we have the relationships that are fulfilling to us? Are we living a consumer lifestyle where in order to feel satisfied, we need to constantly be, you know, going out to eat and partaking of media and figuring out what media to partake of? Or are we creating with the people around us? Because creating things with the people around us, sitting down and having an amazing conversation or making a meal or playing music, those things don't have to cost money, or at least not much money. And what does it look like to really live in right relationship with the people around us and have the experiences that we want to be having? And what are those experiences and why? Or are we engaging in media that has us escaping from what could be really, really amazing creative life?
I love that you mentioned sacred economics because I had a few things that were coming through my brain. I was writing stuff down and I wrote that down, especially in the context of the economic and money story. I think Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein is one of the most, honestly, one of the most inspirational books for me. But I also read that at a time when I was really struggling in my accountant life, and somebody was speaking my language. It was full of heart and love, but like grounded economic theory. And yeah, anyways, it's wonderful. So I just wanted to plug that again because I think that it's one of my favorite books. Um, but I think one of the things that you were mentioning was, you know, what is really enough. And I think that when we look at our money story, when we're also looking at like what are the assumptions? What are the underlying assumptions when we participate in with money? And part of that is I'm specifically talking about our US dollar, which is a debt-based currency. So currency is created when debt is issued. And so that money is really created, but that interest on top of that debt doesn't exist. And so that creates artificial scarcity and requires forever growth. And so these are the agreements that we agree to when we play with money. And I realize we have to. I'm not advising that we don't, but it's good to know that that's what we're agreeing to when we participate in that currency.
Yeah.
And I think that it's nice to know this so that we're aware of it, so we can kind of feel. And how does that artificial scarcity create kind of what we were talking about before, just being stuck in that survival mode of, oh, well, I've made enough money, but I'm still feeling like it's not enough. And and then there's all this uncertainty. So I should, I need to save more because I don't know what's going to happen. And I think at the end of the day, and we're seeing things shift too, and we're being invited to, I think, come back to like to be grounded in kind of what you were mentioning of like shutting off the social media and being present in the real things that are happening every day. And I think this also comes to planet and climate, the other pillar of like, how does nature, how does energy move in the natural world? And what's that currency? And are we playing with a currency that is aligned with those characteristics? And I'm feeling like the artificial scarcity and the forever growth are going to be pain points when it
Yeah.
comes to reconciling the frequency of the money with the frequency of the planet, which to me is reality. This money, right? This is a money story. It's one that we've created. And it's one that we agree to. And it's one that we have the power to change.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to point out that we live on a finite planet. Earth isn't getting any bigger. And while some people are like, let's go to Mars, there are things that we would need to do to extract from this planet to get from here to there that like what would it look like to actually be in right relationship with the planet that we have before trying to go to a new one? It's almost like, people often talk about polyamory and relationships and those sorts of things. And when you're adding another relationship, if you're breaking out of the typical monogamous structure that is predominant in our society today, any additional relationships that you add adds so much complexity. I feel like having another planet is going to add so much complexity. How about we take care of the relationship with the planet that we have first and make sure that we've got this really, really down before we add more complexity?
Exactly. And I also think with what you're saying, while we live on a finite planet, we live on a planet that like also works in cycles, and there's regeneration in those cycles, and there's a rhythm in there. And if we can participate in that rhythm, there's regeneration, and there is um, circulation, and there is like regrowth. There's also death. It's a cycle, and I think that you know part of this the regenerative accounting and regenerative economics is being able to tap back into these rhythms. But part of that requires listening and reconnection.
Mhm.
Um, and and I think a lot of that isn't, it's not going to be spoken in a textbook. She's not going to give us numbers. It's a listening in a whole different way. And I think that's why this regenerative accounting, it while sometimes we're always trying to figure out like what does it look like exactly, and like we're still trying to figure it out, and it looks different ways all the time, and there's not one path either, which is beautiful. um, but where our traditional accounting is so much here and so much in numbers, and it's mental and thinking, which is brilliant, and we need that too. But the regenerative accounting is really asking us to come back into our hearts
Mhm.
and to listen in different ways. Um, and to me, I feel like that's one of the core pieces, at least for me, one of the core lessons. And the core feelings I get when I think about, "Oh, what is this?" And it's here.
I love that. And I feel like that stems right into kind of the next level of questions around how these pillars are currently impacting our lives and practices, and what strategies kind of come to mind for implementing the pillars in actionable ways. And I think taking it pillar by pillar with the idea in mind, we often talk in the Accounting Alchemy Network around we're working to turn accounting into how we account for what we want to be held accountable to. So, how do we account for each of these pillars, and what in each of these pillars do we want to be held accountable to? So, as we're looking at each pillar, and figuring out like how does it currently impact our lives and practices, and how can we implement actionable change, starting with the first one, that humane governance and politics element. What do we want to be held accountable to, and how can we account for that? I know for myself, when I had a bookkeeping firm with employees and quite a few clients and those sorts of things, governance was actually really important for me. And I created an employee-owned business and wanted to make sure that we had a roundtable team where everyone was able to be in their zone of genius and doing what they loved and were supported, and that there was full agency and freedom of each member of the team. And that's something that often we don't get in hierarchical business and governance structures. Um, and the way that our monetary systems impact our governance systems. So here's where they're weaving together. When we create or invest a lot of money into something or buy something that's expensive, there's a certain level of ownership that has us holding this thing tightly. And I'm curious what it might look like to hold things a little more gently with open hands, because if we're holding something tightly, we also can't receive more. And it creates that scarcity mindset. And when we have that in our relationships with people, those relationships don't flow as well. And a couple of the books that I've read that really kind of support these ideas. Peter Block wrote a fantastic book called Confronting Our Freedom. And he talks about how true leadership is not about changing someone else's behavior in a hierarchical management leadership mindset. True leadership is confronting others with their freedom, whatever that is to them. And when we embody this shift and are servant leaders, supporting each other's freedom and fostering each other's growth and giving people room to spread their wings and be in their highest selves, it creates this huge, beautiful change where what we can achieve together is unlimited and truly beautiful. And the experience of that creation can be worth more than money. And also, profit is a side benefit. That's where the money really comes from. Like when we are generating value, profit just flows. And it's so beautiful. And I really, really enjoyed that experience. And getting to have an employee owned company, getting to have that kind of team. And it not everything lasts forever. It was a season in my life that I had that. My fantastic business partner, Vanessa, had to step back for health reasons. And yeah, we made different changes. We decided to shift things. And that was actually when I backed away from the back end bookkeeping and I went full strategy consulting. There were other things that I was being called into in my life. And the Accounting Alchemy Network was one of those things. But nonetheless, having that opportunity to build an employee-owned business was beautiful. And just because something ends does not mean it was a failure. I feel like that was a really, really big success for all that was involved at the time. And that's one strategy around, governance and self-governance and how it flows with some of the other pillars. It can also be in our communities, our nonprofit organizations, or in our local or greater than local government structures. And I'm curious, Cass, what you've noticed around the governance pillar and how that impacts you in your life and practice.
Mhm. So out of these few bullets that we have under the humane governance, the um, component that really is loud for me is the power dynamics and shifting from a power over to a power with paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is, I think this is a prerequisite to, I think, being relevant in the future. And this is one too that I can, I guess I'm really sensitive to feeling it. And I'm a lot more discerning um, for all the accounting work that I do now. I will only do it in environments that have a power with paradigm.
Mm.
And in fact, when I've seen things start to shift, I have brought it up and have been honest about that that's not going to work for me. Um, and there's a part of me that's like really wants to protect my participation in the power with paradigm. And that's where I want to keep my energy. And it's still, and there, I'll also say too, we're in a transition and these hierarchical systems, the way I see this transition is like there are different roles. And because somebody might be higher in this hierarchy, that's the role that they're playing. Even in like when it comes to somebody that's managing or we've put them up on a pedestal. And I think if we can realize that that's their role and they're playing that role, and that at the end of the day, they are just as powerful as um, maybe the people that they're helping to organize. And there can still be these like roles that we have while still valuing everybody's power. And I think that this comes back to also, what does it mean to be a leader? Like there's still leaders in a power with paradigm, but leaders, I think, are people that have been maybe given some inherent power and know how to empower that within others. That's the way I see leadership in this power with paradigm. And these are new things. I'm still figuring this out and still trying to understand this. But I think first it's being aware of like where is the inherent power
Mm-hmm.
in some of the dynamics that exist? And how can we recognize that they're there and um, step into the role that you're being asked to step into and activate that power within the others that you're working with?
Yeah. I love that. I love that framing of leaders in that servant leadership position, recognizing that the best leaders are fulfilling a role and that the people around them are grateful for them fulfilling that role because they don't want to do that. It's not that that person has more power than them. It's that there's a job that needs to be done and somebody's got to do it. Someone's got to call the meeting. Someone's got to facilitate the meeting. Sometimes someone needs to make decisions. And some of those decisions are not easy to make. And how do we make those decisions together? How do we make sure that all voices are heard? It's a lot sometimes. And yeah, leadership can be a heavy burden sometimes. And how do we recognize our leaders as people who are fulfilling important roles? And it's not that that gives them more status, wealth, credit, anything like that, that each of us has a role to serve and asking ourselves, what is mine to do? How do I step into my leadership, my agency, and whatever is in highest service for me? And that does not necessarily have to be standing at the front of the room if that's not what calls to me. It could be that I'm the one crafting the newsletter. It could be that I'm the one deep in the database, managing those numbers, that if that's, if solving the puzzle gives me joy, wonderful, I will solve the puzzle and then I will pass it to somebody else to say, here are the findings. And thank you to this person who solved the puzzle, like giving credit where credit is due. So thank you, Cass. That's such a beautiful reframe.
And I think one other thing too, I wanted to throw in there of like what this looks like, or at least when I feel like, oh, okay, when I feel there's some healthy power dynamics, is being able to recognize like what are people's zones of genius,
Hmm.
and being able to be a student while somebody is in their zone of genius, and then also being in your zone of genius and being a teacher. And can you play both of those roles with the same people?
Yeah.
And and I think that's where we're shifting from these shift frames of hierarchy that sometimes don't let that happen.
Yeah.
But if it's a little bit more horizontal, we can all lead and listen and teach and learn. And I mean, that's how you create incredible teams and
Mhm.
organizations when you can do that. And when there's not a threat, I guess, right, to somebody else shining in
Hmm.
their zone of genius.
Yeah. Horizontal, and also there's circular. I love sociocratic circle forms of governance, and also recognizing that, even if there's a triangle, that triangles can also be horizontal. And the best analogy that I have for this is, if you picture a V of geese flying, somebody has to be at the front breaking the wind. And that role changes out frequently because being that front person is exhausting. So, how do we support those leaders who are in the front breaking the wind to not always have to be that person in the front breaking that wind for the rest of the geese flying behind? And yeah, changing it out, allowing those roles to circulate, and that it's okay that someone is in the lead in a moment, like a relay race. We got to pass the baton, and we need to have systems that support the passing of the baton, both because having one person lead all the time isn't sustainable for them, but also, like Yertle the turtle, if it goes to their head, at some point something's going to have to shift, and it's all going to come tumbling down. So, yeah. You gotta love a
That's,
call when there's a Dr. Seuss reference.
I was gonna say that was a perfect analogy.
Geese and turtles. Are we ready to move on to the second pillar?
Yeah.
So, when it comes to the economics and money story, how is that currently impacting life and practice and strategies for implementing change in an actionable way? Um, I can just offer a little bit from my own experience. I've been really shifting how I show up financially in this world, in that I live on 2 acres where I grow most of my own food, and have done what I can to eliminate all of the debt in my life. And I also recognize, bridging this in with the pillar, that there is some privilege that has allowed me to do that, and that is not currently accessible to everyone in our world. I'm trying to figure out, how do we make that accessible to everyone? Because, like you were talking about earlier, Cass, the debt-based currency system that makes it so that new money is created when debt is created. So many people in our system are just buried in debt. And that is creating a model of slavery, modern slavery, that is um, marginalizing certain people in our system at a ratio that is not effective, and that those people are usually the people of color. They are people of, you know the neurodiversity, gender equality, all of these things, any kind of identity that can step into these elements, needing to make sure that opportunities are accessible to everyone. It can be based on so many different things, and that's why we have laws in our country around some inclusion elements, you know, making sure that people cannot be discriminated against for gender or religious beliefs or skin color, ethnic background, that there's a lot of those elements. And at the same time, many of those laws are not being effectively upheld. And trying to figure out how do we make this accessible to everyone. And so when I talk about the economic and money story and how I've done things to shift things, I feel like I cannot give voice to my experience, my story, without also acknowledging my privilege as a white presenting cis woman in our current world. So, with that said, doing what I can to live as humbly as possible, to make it so that I am able to share as much as I can of what I have and pass these things around. I have friends living with me that I do not charge them rent. I don't believe in rent. I don't believe in property ownership. I am in the process right now of working to give away everything I've worked with my entire life. In that this 2 acres that I live on, that I do not refer to as property, I'm working to make it so we can develop the legal constructs so that this land will legally own itself, and acknowledging rights of nature, acknowledging the personhood and sovereignty of what indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, what we commonly refer to as North America, refer to this land and all of the other elements of these ecosystems as our elder relatives, that these are familial relationships, and that everything around us is alive. That those are the values that I'm upholding with my choices. And as a result, I don't have savings and I also don't have debt. I'm not working to build economic security. I'm working to build relational security. And that changes everything. To be working on those relationships and to be feeding people in my community that need it. Going to the community meal this last Saturday at my local library with a huge bowl of greens because we are growing more food here than we can eat. And what does it look like to share that, to make sure that that surplus is going to the people who need it the most? That is where I put my time and energy. And the money that I make goes toward building those systems. So when I had a big project last year and made tens of thousands of dollars, that money went toward putting in a whole house battery to make it so that when if the grid fails at any point, if there's a power outage, whether it be short term or long term due to natural disaster or anything else, that here in this place, we have energy sovereignty, which also gives us water sovereignty because our well operates on electricity. And we're turning this space into a resilience hub, and not just for ourselves, but also to have a safe place where our community can come, where we are growing our own food, we have water, we have energy for heat and to charge phones if we need to charge devices, things like that. And it's not just for us. And trying to support other people in our local community and also creating resilience hubs like this one. And to be able to network those resilience hubs together in resilience networks, which creates stronger, broader communities. And that is what is really going to hold us together. So it's not that I've completely stepped away from, I don't need money, I don't use money at all. I do use money and I use it in alignment with my values, trying to build the things and create the changes that I want to see in the world. And that flows into every aspect of my life and my business. How about you, Cass? How are
I
these
love
really impacting your life and your practices?
I love hearing about what you're doing, Ingrid, and I think it's really powerful and it's wonderful to hear like real world examples of what people are doing and how they're living and like their lifestyle. And I think that you've taken this and it's not just like, oh, it's existing in one aspect here. You're embodying it from the ground up, and that's beautiful. And I know it's taken a lot of time and work to get there. But I just love hearing, the way you're authentically showing up with the economic and money story in your life. And I love hearing it. So for me, I feel there's a couple ways that I've been moving through the economic and money story. And for me, I would say at like the basic part is money is a resource just like all the other resources in my world. I don't see it as like the resource. I see it as a resource. And being able to feel the way that being able to feel the way energy and economics, creating a new economic story that doesn't have money at the center. Um, and part of that is living in right relationship with um, the land, with the people around me, with the community. And part of this is really, it shows up very simply in terms of some of the places in my local ecosystem, some of my nature spots that I frequent, that I have a relationship with. I leave offerings. And sometimes they're physical, sometimes it's song, sometimes it's just my presence. Um, and but showing up in reciprocity to the world around me and realizing that that is economy. An economy, like the root of economy is home, if I remember right. It's oikos, which is home in Greek. Um, and being able to ground, what does it mean to be in an economy? What does it mean to have my needs met? And even more than my needs met, but to flourish. And how does that energy flow? And for me, kind of what we had talked about earlier, the frequency of money is, I can feel that it's a little off from, I guess, this from the currency or from the frequency of the world that I would like to be a part of and I would like to create. And so while I'm not here to demonize it, I'm here to recognize that we are in a transition and holding it in its rightful place of like, at this point, I still have um, a mortgage, which I'm grateful I have a mortgage. I'm not paying rent, although I still call it rent because I don't own it. The banks own it. And if I look at the interest I'm paying every year, it kind of makes me want to throw up. But money is a resource in my world. But um, and part of this too is being able to look at gift economies, and that has been um, so rich for me because gosh, there's so much in there with reciprocity, and part of that is also recognizing that if I'm giving to you, it's not that I'm without something, it's that you're a part of my world, and so I'm giving to also myself. And so when we look at our economy, we look at it bigger than just my world and my financial world and my it's the well-being of all of the people around me and being able to give something to my community without the expectation of giving anything back, of getting anything back, and recognizing that I might fill them up and then they might go fill somebody else up, that fills somebody else up, that somebody else ends up filling me up too, and recognizing the interconnectedness
A rising
of
tide raises all ships.
exactly, yeah, and the power of the interconnectedness of our economies, um, and being able to see economy beyond just the money flow.
Hmm.
And it's how are people showing up and realizing that some people are so rich with knowledge and have beautiful things to share with the world, um, that our current financial story might not give them value,
Yeah.
but they are so valuable.
Yes.
And being able to feel that and recognize that, um, and bring them into the economy
Hmm.
as valuable.
Yes. Love that. And I feel like you touched on something really important as you were talking about the offerings and particularly song. I heard it said once that song is currency in the spirit world. And I feel like that kind of brings in the spiritual aspect of this, recognizing that whatever your beliefs are, why we're here and, what comes after this, and, all of those really big things of We don't know. It's all based on faith and story and belief. And yeah, there's a lot there. And at the same time, like that is underlying all of this, especially when we recognize that money and value are spiritual. Those are stories that human beings made up. Money would not exist if humans were to vanish from this planet right now, money would cease to exist because it is a construct that human beings made up. The only value money has is what we believe it has. It is all subjective. It's all based on belief. And so if it's all based on belief, looking at what are our beliefs? Because if we want to change something in the world, if we want to change a system, it's not about changing the system and like, tweaking something and just having a strategy. We have to change our underlying attitudes and beliefs and values around what is changing in that system in order for the system to actually change. True change is not strategic. True change is cultural. And I feel like that brings us back into that ecos, that home element of economy, recognizing that home is the people that we share it with. Home is the places that we feel connection with. All of that is about connection. And yet our current extractive economy has us feeling more disconnected than ever. So by bringing ourselves back into a more holistic approach where we get to feel whole in ourselves and in our spiritual wellness, in all of these systems, that is what's going to really bring about the changes that we want to see. And I feel like that brings us really clearly into the third pillar, which is that wealth aspect. And we're seeing how all of these are intertwined, interrelated. You cannot have one without the other. So yeah, that wealth aspect, just being able to thrive in this pattern of cycling, spiraling life. And yet when we participate in systems that are extractive and exploitative of any peoples or our planet, it creates systems that are diminishing to life, and that diminishes us. That when we take or are diminishing of others or our planet, that we are actually hurting ourselves. And that in order to be fully well in ourselves, we need to be creating that rising tide like you were talking about. Anything to add there on the wealth pillar?
This one is, for me, it's been the most grounding at a time when I was like, had been maybe, I guess, really programmed in the traditional business as usual economic and money story. And I was like, I know that's not the answer, but I don't know what this next one looks like, and I don't know what it looks like for me. And I took a break, and I took a break from my corporate job and going back to this privilege piece, grateful that I had the ability to take some time off. And during that time, I was just like, what is true wealth? And I was on this pursuit of true wealth. And kind of like I'd mentioned earlier, when I was met with it, and they were usually simple moments, like having a fresh loaf of hot baked bread in the middle of the table with a bunch of my favorite humans. Like those moments, it almost brings tears to my eyes. Like those are the simple moments. Like that is true wealth. Um, and I I was just on the journey of what is it? And sometimes you don't know what it is until you're met with it and you know what that feels like in your body. And to me, that's like the beacon for what this economy that supports all life. I think that the how we get there and the path to get there, these nuggets of true wealth, that's the beacon.
Yeah,
And it's true wealth that's felt here and that's felt in our body.
I love that.
And um yeah.
Yeah. I want to bring in a slightly more concrete example, recognizing that this wealth pillar can feel very almost woo-woo of like, oh yeah, meditate, do yoga, work out, that sort of thing. But bringing in a very practical aspect of it, let's talk about our healthcare systems. Our private profit insurance systems and private profit healthcare systems that are actively profiting off the unwellness of the people in our society. And once again, bringing in the Jedi pillar, which we'll get to next, acknowledging that I have a fairly healthy body and that that is a privilege, that not everyone has that privilege and that that needs to be acknowledged, and that it creates inequity in our world, that some people are born with healthier bodies than others. And just checking into some of those elements and making sure that that's part of the conversation here. Um, I have been fortunate in the simple fact that I intentionally keep my income low, that I qualify for the state-based health insurance here in Oregon. And I haven't been kicked off of it, for which I'm grateful, through some ups and downs of income, which I always report. I'm not hiding anything or anything like that. And at the same time, I've often said, I was actually after reading Lynn Twist's book, The Soul of Money. She asks a very important question in there around um, what choices are we making with our money? And are we putting our money towards things that are in alignment with our values? And it was reading that book, that was when I realized I feel gross anytime I pay a health insurance monthly payment. It just feels disgusting to me. The CEO of Aetna gets paid, I think, $167,000 a day. And meanwhile, most of these health insurance companies are trying to get out of providing the basic care that the people they are supposed to be serving need to survive. The system is broken, it is corrupt. So I'm grateful to have the only effective health insurance in the state of Oregon, which is the state-based insurance. And if I were to get booted off of this insurance, if I make too much money or no longer qualify, or heck, if our system starts to erode and that insurance goes away, I would not choose to pay money into the broken insurance programs. I am very grateful that alternatives are arising. And in particular, we had the wonderful experience a handful of months ago to interview the founder of manifestequity.org, which is working to create truly accessible, affordable healthcare for everyone. And I'm so excited that this opportunity has arisen in our lifetimes. Like, this is game changing and exciting. And it reminds me of the Buckminster Fuller quote that I can never remember the word for word, but he says something along the lines of, you can't change the system within the existing system. You need to create a new system that makes that old system obsolete. And that is what Manifest Equity is doing. And so I'm really grateful now that if I were to, not be able to partake of the state-based health insurance, that organizations like Manifest Equity exist. And even donating to Manifest Equity to make it so that people who don't qualify for programs that I have here in Oregon, if other states don't have similar programs, if anyone is going without health insurance, finding ways to make it more equitable and leveraging the privilege that I have to be able to give to others, we now have a system that's worth giving to. And so anyone who's watching this replay, check out that past recording of our interview with the founder of Manifest Equity and really look into that system. It is game changing and is going to create that rising tide in the wealth category, for which I am so excited.
One other thing that I thought was so rad about Manifest Equity is, and I'm not sure if they've reached this, but I know this is one of the things they were trying to do, is being able to eventually pay off your health insurance.
Yes.
Like, it's just like some other, like your car payment, where you pay it and then after so many years, and I'm not going to say the details because I don't remember them and I'm not sure if they've rolled that out yet, but I know it's something they were intending to do.
It's a
Or for some,
goal. I think it's on the horizon as a goal.
and that is beautiful because that goes back to the the forever growth piece, right? We're just going to continue to make your money forever. And they're not trying to do that. We're going to
Mhm.
pay for this, and then you've paid for it, and now you just have it. You just have health insurance. And I think that that's really beautiful. And you had mentioned this a few times when you were just talking about how grateful you are for, the state-based health insurance that you have. And I think another key piece to this wealth piece is like meeting that with gratitude, like being able to feel into those things in those moments and pause
Hmm.
and kind of marinate in that gratitude for a second. And I think that that's really powerful. And there's a currency in there
Yeah.
that's working on some other levels that would take us probably down some really woo-woo rabbit holes. But that was loud, and I wanted to mention that. And I, speaking specifically to the like the health piece, for me, I mean, I've taken a slightly different approach of I don't have health insurance, but also going back to I don't want to pay into that system. But I'm willing to spend twice as much on my food. And I figure if I'm not paying there, then I'm paying here.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's that piece. And that to me, that's true wealth of being able to eat local, nutrient dense food, hopefully by humans that I know who made it or
Yeah.
who grew it or made it. And that is relational to me. And the things that we eat, that's intimate. That's going into my body.
Yeah.
And I want to be connected. I want to know who's, do they have my same values? Because then they don't need all the labels on the food. I don't have to ask them all the questions like, are you poisoning my food? Are you putting chemicals in there? Like, no, I know this human and they've got beautiful values. And it comes back to this relationship piece, which is quite intimate.
Yeah. Well, and also recognizing there once again the Jedi element, which I'm going to keep coming back to because I feel like Jedi is underlying all of this, that these systems of inequity are built upon hundreds and hundreds of years of trauma and scarcity mindset, and just wanting to acknowledge that not everyone has access to good food, that there are food deserts out there, that there are children in third world nations who are literally malnourished and obese at the same time because they are being sent prepackaged, unhealthy crap to eat and it's making them fat. But yet they are not getting their basic nutrition needs met. And the food that they would have had in their natural environment, that those environments have been destroyed to the point where they can no longer grow healthy food. That these are the inequities that are present in our world that are so important to call out and be aware of. And that in order for us to be well, we need to make sure that everyone has access to that. That each of us is part of this giant living earth organism, that we are the earth earthing and healing itself. Um, that it's not just about this individualistic mindset, that individualism is one of the attitudes and behaviors of institutionalized racism. So taking that into account. And then there was also another element. I love when you were saying about, choosing not to buy into the extractive insurance model, that instead investing that money toward healthier food, and also recognizing that there are other ways to go about it, that for people who are mostly healthy, that we might not need insurance, that I would rather pay my healthcare provider directly than pay for insurance to make it so that there's a copay. I would end up paying less because I don't need a ton of regular medical attention. Sure, I just got a bunch of labs done and I have an iron deficiency, and I am grateful to have that awareness that now I know, oh, hey, this is why I've been feeling off, you know, and that not everyone has access to be able to get their labs done. I want to make it so that everyone has access. And I love my doctor. I have a relationship with my doctor. She is great. Not everyone has that. And there are fewer and fewer people going into the medical profession and, creating that mountain of student debt to try to be able to serve in that way. Nursing, like, we need more medical professionals in the same way that fewer and fewer people are going into the accounting profession, that fewer people are going into the professions because our education systems are freaking broken, which leads us back to the economic and money and also the political and governance systems, that all of these systems are intertwined. And that in order for someone to learn to become a doctor, they have to go into debt. How do we fix this? How do we heal it? Because this is a sickness in our society, that this is what we're encountering, that there are not enough medical professionals, and that the medical professionals that there are not getting paid healthy, sustainable wages, that they spend more time and energy navigating the broken insurance systems than they get to invest in focusing on the health and wellness of their clients. And similarly with accounting, how do we fix this? How do we heal it? We opt out of the systems that don't feel good to us. And for me personally, like I said, if I were not to qualify for the state-based insurance programs, I would simply opt out. I would frankly rather die. Recognizing that death's inevitable, it comes to all of us eventually. That is a hill that I'm willing to die on. I would rather die than put my hard-earned money or any of the energy that I'm working toward into inequitable systems. That I want to unsubscribe, I want to opt out. Recognizing that we are starting to get a little low on time, let's move on to the Jedi pillar. And I feel like I've said quite a few things about Jedi already, about it is so important for us to be acknowledging the systems inequity that are underpinning all of the um, systems that are out of balance in our society. I'm wondering if you have anything to add on the Jedi side of things, Cass.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this is just really being honest and looking at how things have been throughout history. And for especially people that look like us and come from our background, the most important thing for us to do is to listen and also to come back to that human governance piece with the power with paradigm and allowing and creating environments and creating systems, whatever we have the ability to influence, where we can help empower other people. Because I can't tell somebody that I know what's best for them. I don't know. I don't, and and I think for me, this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about, when we look at all the problems in the world, I'm so passionate about the economic piece because to me, this is the mode that or the system that is still enslaving so many of us. And how many solutions would we have, and how beautiful would this planet be? And the tapestry of human creation and achievement if we had everybody participating
Yes.
and not in survival mode trying to just make it through the day. How beautiful would it be if people had space to to lean into more, have the space and the freedom to be able to put their gifts into the world
Yeah.
and not be busy on the treadmills that we're put in. And we need everybody doing that. And to me, that's like the vision that motivates me, and especially from like the economic piece.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that like beautiful human tapestry of what everybody can bring to the table. And I want to see it from people of all colors and all backgrounds and all stories. That's rich. That's beautiful. And that's the world that I want to see. That's the community that I want to see.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, love that. And I think it's also really important to just call attention to, in order to create that, um, there's learning that needs to be done. There's healing of past injustices, and there is ongoing oppression, like our private profit prison systems in this country, which are basically modern slavery. Like that needs to be acknowledged, and we need to figure out how to fix it. And often that takes looking at it, and looking at it is hard. Really, truly acknowledging it and looking at it and not looking away. It hurts. The perpetrator induced traumatic stress of acknowledging privilege and acknowledging settler colonialism and the advantages that come along with that. It's not that there's anything that needs to be specifically given up. We don't have to make our lives worse to make other people's lives better. We do need to figure out how to share effectively and recognize that our lives are intertwined, that we depend on each other. And it can be hard. There is healing to do there. And for anyone who is new to these discussions, recognizing that it's uncomfortable, reading fantastic books like Resmaa Menakem's book, My Grandmother's Hands, is a really, really good place to start. Also acknowledging the caste systems, reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson could be another good place to start. And recognizing that if these topics make us uncomfortable, it means we're doing it right. Growth and change happen outside the comfort zone. And that healing is uncomfortable. It hurts. And sometimes things need to be rebroken in order to heal right. So, yeah, stepping
And I'll,
into this Jedi pillar.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll say one more thing on this too, and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, go for it.
Um, I think that we look at these systems of oppression, and like you and I we were not responsible personally for creating them, but we do have an ability to respond.
Yes.
And that is what I think this pillar asks us to do, is
Yeah.
what is our ability to respond, and how do we respond, and how, and is our responses just creating more harm? And I think that's why a lot of this comes back to approaching this pillar with humility
Mm.
and listening.
Yeah.
And I think storytelling is a powerful, here listening to people's stories is a powerful medicine for this pillar, at least
Yes.
in my experience.
I feel like there's so many stories to share, and we could talk about this forever. And in the 2 minutes we have left, I want to bring us into the planet and climate pillar. And I feel like it's actually a great segue from the Jedi pillar, acknowledging that there is a unfortunate cultural human supremacy over nature that has become really a core focus of a lot of these extractive, exploitative systems, and that recognizing the life and sovereignty in all that is around us, including the planet itself, is essential in order to heal all of this. And that when we start applying some of these justice, equity, diversity, inclusion elements to acknowledging the non-human relatives around us, that it changes everything and is so important. And I'm wondering, Cass, if you have anything to add to that as we are wrapping up.
Yeah, I think this is, um, I think this part of this comes back to the perspective of like, who am I? Am I just Cass in this body? Um, but realizing that we're connected, and that we're connected to this whole greater, like, beautiful planet that we're on. And that I'm borrowing her earth skins for this life. And at the end, I have to give them back. And realizing that we come from this greater system. And to me, going back to systems and all these other systems we're talking about, biomimicry is one of the most like inspirational studies for me. And it um, looking at nature for solutions, and recognizing that there are billions of years of evolution on this planet, and anything you can think of doing, anything from like, how do I make this waterproof, to how do I approach this situation in my emotional life? Nature has 1,000 answers for you, and she's been evolving it over billions of years. There is an um, there's an intelligence there. There is a real alive being there. And to me, that's the reality of the
Yeah.
plane that we're living in.
And we're part of it. We have access to
Yes.
it because we're part of it.
Yes.
That we have an intelligence there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when we come back to the regenerative accounting and what does this look like and what does it feel like and whatever, nature is what's inspired all of my understandings for how to create a more regenerative, peaceful, fulfilling environment because
And
it's
life.
been doing that.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that's the place where when nothing else is making sense, I'm filled up just by being out there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
All right. Well, on that beautiful note, yes, I feel like a lot of what you're saying can kind of be summed up with that old adage of we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And how do we acknowledge that our role as accounting professionals is in large part a spiritual one, that we are supporting people through having their experience in this world. And what do we want that experience to look like and have it based in our values, our beliefs? How can we turn accounting into how we account for what we want to be held accountable to? So, on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up. And for anyone who watched the replay, thank you so much for joining us. And please join us for an upcoming conversation. We would love to have your voice in the room. Join us on Hilo to continue having these conversations asynchronously online. And we look forward to more of these amazing, beautiful conversations and supporting each of us in being the change that we want to see in the world. Thanks so much. Have a great day.